Hi everyone, so now we're going to be talking about reflections, and for reflections, instead of just shifting up, down, left, right like what we did in translations, now we're going to be flipping the shape over across a line. And so the goal here for the first two examples is to find the line that it flipped over, which is actually pretty easy because the way that I think about it is I just try and find the middle of the two shapes. So let me grab my pen and I'm going to change the color to red again. And if we look at number one, we've got the original shape, which is D, E, F, and then we've got the other shape, which is D prime, E prime, F prime. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line right between them. So like if I cut it in half, which would be this line right here, right on this axis. So notice that if I draw, like if I were to flip the white shape over this line, then it would become the blue shape. So that's what that's what a reflection is. Now the goal here is to actually find out what that line, what is the equation for that line? That is the x-axis. So we would just say it reflected across the x-axis. And this is that would be our answer. Okay, so now let's look at the second shape. And the second shape, it doesn't cross over an axis, but we can still draw a line in between the two shapes to see like how they flipped. And it's actually like right down the middle right here. And that's totally fine to be right down the middle of shapes. It's even fine to kind of cut in between shapes, just as long as it's a straight line. It'll always be a straight line. So now we need to figure out what the equation of this line is. When it's a vertical line, it'll always be an x equals equation, and when it's a horizontal line, it'll be a y equals equation. So because it's a vertical line, we know it's an x equals equation. And then we have to decide what x is equal to. If I look at that graph, that would be, it crosses where x is equal to 3, which means my equation is where x is equal to 3. So it reflects across the equation, or the line x is equal to 3. All right, so now let's get to the second portion of these examples where instead of deciding where it reflects over, now we're going to actually draw the shape. So for number 3, it's asking us to reflect across the y-axis. What I do in these cases, I actually draw the line first so I can see what's happening, and then I can draw the shape. So the y-axis is right here. So what I want to do is reflect the shape across this red line. Now I'm going to use a different color here, blue. When I reflect, there is formulas for it, but I'm going to show you the other way to do this. The way that I like to do it is I like to start on the red line and go to the shape. So if I'm going to go to point B from the red line, I would have to go 1 to the left. So when I reflect the shape, I'm going to go back to the red line, and instead of going 1 to the left, I'm going to go 1 to the right. And that's my new B, or my B prime. Okay, now let's do C. So if I go to the red line and I just go straight left to C, then I'd have to go left 3 units. But when I reflect, I'm going to go back to the red line, and instead of going left, I'm going to go right 3 units. So 1, 2, 3 would put C prime right here. Now let's do the same thing for D. I'm going to go to the red line, straight left to D, which would put me left 5 units. So to reflect it, we go back to the red line and go right 5 units, which would be right here. And that would be our D prime. And now we can just draw that shape. And there we have it. So look at these are exactly the same shape. They just got flipped over. So once again, they're not going to get bigger or smaller, or the sizes won't change or anything like that. They're just going to flip. Okay, let's look at this last example. On the last example, it's asking us to reflect across the line x equals 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw that line x equals 1. Now, x equals 1 is a vertical line, remember, because anything that is an x equals is vertical, and anything that's y equals is horizontal. So I'm going to draw this line right here where x is actually equal to 1. Then we're going to draw the second shape by doing the same thing as what we did in the last example. So I'm going to start with point D. I'm going to go from the red line to point D. I went 3 to the right. So now I'm going to go 3 to the left, which would put it right here. And this is my new D prime. Now let's do point C. Now point C is actually right on the line. So I didn't have to move, which means that my new point C is also right on the line. They line up really well. And then my point E, if I go from the red line to point E, I go 2 to the right. So instead I'm going to go from the red line 2 to the left. And here's my new point E. And then we just connect all the dots. And there we have it. That is our reflection. So we've been, on both of our reflections, we had vertical lines. But if you had a horizontal line that you were reflecting across, instead of thinking, I went this many left, now I got to go this many right, you would say, okay, I went this many up, so now I have to go this many down. It's still the same, you just do opposite. So opposite of left is right, opposite of right is left, opposite of up is down, opposite of down is up. And this is how we reflect shapes on a coordinate graph.